Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the AK12BR, probably the best battle rifle in the game. I know the AG3 is good, the G3 is probably my favorite up until this point, but the AK12BR has some really cool stats. First off, it has 700 RPM, can 3-shot up to 80 studs, and honestly, it doesn't really have a lot of recoil. It doesn't have a torso multiplier or a better headshot multiplier, but it has a burst mode, and we will get into the burst mode because this thing shreds with the burst mode. Let's get into it. The AK12BR has 39 damage in CQC, no torso multiplier, a regular headshot multiplier, 700 RPM auto, and 1000 RPM burst. It has a minimum time to kill of 0.08 seconds, a penetration depth of 2 studs, normal suppression, high muzzle velocity, and good damage ranges of 80 to 140 studs. Unlike some battle rifles, the AK12BR actually has recoil, but it's pretty controllable, to be honest. Even with the burst, it's somewhat controllable. With the auto mode, you can take targets out at range, and it can 3-shot to over 80 studs, which is pretty good, honestly. With 700 RPM and a 3-shot and 2-shot with 2 to the head, this could be considered slightly better than some of the other battle rifles and maybe the AK-47. The AK-47 can kill with 1 torso and 1 headshot. The AK-12BR cannot do this. It does not have a torso multiplier, and it doesn't have 42 damage. It only has 39. 39 is a bit low, but the 700 RPM kind of makes up for that. That's higher than the G3, the AG3, I believe the Scar H. Yeah. It's 100 more than the Scar H, and overall on the auto mode, this thing is actually really good. But with the burst mode, this thing shoots at 1000 RPM. That's the same fire rate as the PPSH-41 and the Colt SMG-633. However, this thing can 3-shot to over 80 studs and does very high damage and can 2-shot to the head. So it is kind of not necessarily an upgrade, but like a side grade to one of those, because they have better recoil control and you don't have to hyperburst them to get 1000 RPM. They just have 1000 RPM. But this gun is very dominant over a lot of battle rifles, including even guns that are considered really good, like the AG3. The AG3 can 3-shot all ranges, but this can 4-shot at all ranges, and if you hyperburst it, kills much quicker than even the AG3 at range, which is really cool. This thing cannot 2-shot to the torso. It doesn't even have a torso multiplier at all, and that could be kind of a downgrade from a lot of different guns. It can't 2-shot to like anywhere basically. The G3, what I think about the G3 is cool is that it can 2-shot to the head at all ranges. This gun, nah, it's just a 4-shot basically anywhere. Probably a 3-shot to the head, but you have to hit all 3 headshots. And this thing is not like the G11 or the AN94, where it's all the shots in the same spot for the burst. This thing has recoil. This thing has a decent amount of recoil, especially on the burst. When you have the auto mode, it is somewhat controllable, but still best like kept to CQC, and I wouldn't really use basically any battle rifle in LRC except maybe the Scar H. Bazaar, this map that I have the gameplay on, the other map, like maps like that where it's like warehouse maybe too, like it just maps that you have basically only CQC engagements, because if you're going to be taking people out at range, it's going to be a little bit difficult. You're going to have to full mag people, or you won't even kill them with a full mag unless you're very accurate. You tap fire, or you use, I guess, maybe 1 burst and hope that all 3 shots land, except it can't even 1 burst. So it's just a little bit more difficult to use at range than a lot of battle rifles, and you want to just use this thing in CQC, and that's where it's great. 1000 RPM burst up to 80 studs is good. This thing is best in CQC to mid-range combat, and in mid-range combat it even rivals like a lot of good mid-range guns, like the M16A3, my bad, not 4, has 800 RPM and can 4-shot, and probably at about 80 studs you're going to be 5-shotting people. So a 3-shot to the ranges that the M16A3 can 4-shot, and 200 more RPM, especially when the M16A3 is supposed to be an amazing mid-range gun. I mean, it is, because it has less recoil, but this thing can definitely, all I'm saying is it could definitely dominate some of those guns if you control the recoil correctly. Speaking of attachments, let's get into some attachments. First off, optic. I prefer reflex sight. Yes, I say this on a lot of guns, but also delta sight. I say that on a lot of guns as well. I just like them. They're good sights. The Z point is also good. The DDHB reflex, I think it's kind of good on battle rifles. And overall, well, maybe OKP7, since it's kind of an AK. People like OKPs on their AKs. OKP7 is also just a good sight in general, so use one of those. But if not, just use anything CQC oriented. Don't use a scope. I don't know why you would use a scope. This gun has a lot of recoil. Secondly, you could probably use muzzle brake, but I prefer compensator. This thing does have a little bit of all over the place recoil, but it does have just recoil in general. I use compensator and folding grip, but you can use muzzle brake and stubby. I just prefer compensator folding, but the other one works just as well. I mean, maybe not just as well, but they both work. They both reduce recoil in their own ways. And if you want less vertical recoil, then use the muzzle brake and stubby. But if you want better spray patterns and slightly more vertical recoil but better horizontal recoil, then use compensator and folding grip. For other, I just recommend you use blue laser or any laser. Green laser is technically the best. Finally, if you want to use an ammo type, I guess AP is probably your best bet, but I don't think any ammo type is good on this gun. First off, hollow points don't change your shots to kill, ruin your headshot multiplier, ruin your damage ranges, and your suppression, so don't use them. And armor piercing, yes, it's technically kind of good because it increases your penetration depth, but this thing already has a good amount of penetration depth, 2 studs I believe, which is more than average by quite a bit actually, and I just don't recommend you use that because there's no point. It's just a little bit overkill and it ruins your 39 damage. It actually makes it go to 40 studs instead of 80 studs, which is a big downside, not gonna lie. You want to keep that 3 shot to 80 studs, otherwise this gun is going to be a pea shooter, and you don't want a pea shooter, you want a high damage battle rifle. You don't want a little pea shooter gun. Finally, what are my opinions on this gun? I would unironically use this gun. I mean, I do. Like, after making a video on it, I have unlocked every attachment that I could possibly want on this gun. I mean, I haven't unlocked all the attachments. I only have like 350 kills with it, but I've been using it a bit and I like it. It's a good gun. It's fun to use. It's good RPM. The burst is crazy, and overall just a really good battle rifle. I think in certain aspects this gun is better than the AG3 and the G3. I like the G3 a lot. Like I said, it can 2-shot to the head at all ranges, which makes it kind of like a DMR sometimes, and it has decent RPM, but this gun kind of shreds a lot better than the AG3 or the G3 and CQC, at least in my opinion. 1000 RPM is a lot of RPM. So overall, I would rate this gun a 9 out of 10. Yeah, that's a pretty high ranking. I just really like it. It's got a lot of recoil, but it has some really nice features, and if you can keep the recoil down or hyperbursting this thing correctly, like just go like click, 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 click. Don't spam click and don't click super slow. You can kind of get a rhythm. It's a little bit hard to do, but just dump a few mags and burst and figure out what works and what makes it have the highest RPM, and you can get 1000 RPM pretty consistently and kind of destroy people, which is epic. Overall, great gun. Would recommend. Anyways, that's gonna do it for the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe live gameplay video tomorrow. I kind of want to mess around with the 50 cal Deagle because I've been really enjoying that gun, the Deagle XIX, but we'll see. Anyways, sub, join the Discord. See you in the next video. Bye.